I watched Spiderman Into the Spiderverse some time ago. My wholesale critique on it was that it was a good movie, a really good movie. At first, I couldn't offer much deeper than that in critique or analysis because I'd only seen it once, but also because I cried while watching the movie. Actually, I remember tearing up at 3 separate points during the movie. I usually can't critique things very well if they have a strong enough emotional impact on me. So, after leaving the theater, my initial thoughts were, why did this movie have such an emotional impact on me? Why did I care so much about seeing an animated movie about a superhero? I've seen plenty of those. But as I reflected on the film, I realized something that I had been trying to put my finger on for a long time. I realized that Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse got representation right. I've said before that one of the last bastions of social reconciliation for people of color, and black people in my case, is equal and accurate representation in the media. In recent years, there has been a large push for diversity in television and film. Shonda Rhimes is often praised for the creation of numerous characters of color and women in shows like How to Get Away with Murder and Grey's Anatomy. 2008 greenlighted the world's first billion-dollar superhero blockbuster starring a majority black cast in Black Panther. We've also seen the rise of a diverse group of successful directors and producers, those like Ava DuVernay, Justin Lin, Mira Nair, and Ryan Coogler. Yet for all the diversity that they and others have brought to film, few have elicited in me a strong emotional reaction, other than my regard for the craft and the storytelling. According to critics, for all intents and purposes, Crazy Rich Asians was a really good movie. Black Panther was a good movie. Moana was a good movie. Get Out was a good movie. 12 Years a Slave, a good movie. But Moonlight made me cry. Coco made me cry. Best Man Holiday made me cry. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse made me cry. Representation could be many things to many different people. It can promote the visibility of people of color in stories where we usually don't see them. It could be narratives about the life and times of diverse groups of people in a media space that is relatively homogenous. It can be having the comic relief be a person of color. It can be having a woman be the main character rather than a man. It could be a movie about slavery or war in another place in the world. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse may be some of these things, but what makes this and other movies like it so impactful to me is the fact that they don't try to make a point about their diversity. They merely tell an honest story. The Miles Morales that Into the Spider-Verse portrayed was well adjusted, but he didn't have close relationships outside of his family that he could really rely on, so he didn't always fit in. Some bad things happened to him through no fault of his own, and he had to become the person that was capable of handling them. However, Into the Spider-Verse was equally a story about a black boy living in New York City who happens to become Spider-Man, and in every sense of the phrase, delivers on that narrative. Miles' story wasn't about his blackness, or his Latin heritage for that matter, but it was distinctly and authentically those things. It wasn't about him being a New Yorker or the New York experience, but he was a representation of his borough. Miles' story really wasn't even about being Spider-Man, although that is what he became. His narrative was something that was completely his own. The diversity that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse presents isn't self-aware. It doesn't make a point about who Miles is or where he's from. The diversity presented and the blackness presented doesn't distract from the narrative with pointed social commentary. Miles just was black. And not only in the fact that his skin was brown and his hair was curly, Miles presents as culturally Afro-American. His cadence when he talks, his walk, his interest in rap, the clothes he chooses to wear, and the fact that the people he cared for most in the world were also black, all code him as a black boy. Much of television and film rely solely on optics to provide the sense that marginalized people are being represented. Skin color and gender are important, but are only a small aspect of diversity or representation. What is it to be black or anything else if I'm only black in appearance? Culture and diversity are the unique ways that people understand the world, respond to pain, have joy, have a sense of humor, express anger, and even tell a story. What Into the Spiderverse did was allow Miles to possess his own identity without making an issue of it or calling attention to it, thereby allowing the audience to experience something authentic and nuanced. The audience can hear, see, and feel who Miles is without being told. There isn't a point to be made about him being from New York or about the black experience. Miles just has these things about him. Even the female lead of the movie, Spider-Gwen, was unironically female. There was no point to be made about her being a girl version of Spider-Man. She was just another character trying to get back to her universe. The story was universal, but the backdrop and the presentation was something that came from a culturally distinct place. Good representation isn't merely seeing an Asian woman in a job that you would normally not see her. Good representation isn't always just about having a black friend and having a Hispanic friend and having a white friend all hang out together all the time, because life normally does not play out that way. It doesn't always have to have a point to make about oppression or self-awareness or history. Good representation, however, is always accurate. It always has diversity in mind, and diversity is about something particular and distinct. Diversity isn't just a color or an accent. It is a specific experience or a lens through which to tell a story. So when I saw Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse and I saw a skinny black boy who was afraid of change but naturally himself, who saw himself as human, who loved his family, who had some bad things happen to him, who became someone greater by the end, whose blackness, whose diversity was something he inhabited rather than something that he had to declare or acknowledge. Much like me, I cried a little. Good representation doesn't always look like this, and sometimes it does hold a mirror up to itself, and it doesn't always make me tear up, but when it does, it usually means that they got it right.